Welcome to Live Long and Podcast, the greatest Star Trek podcast in the universe, or the multiverse. I'm Dave Mader, bringing you everything Star Trek, and this is our first recap episode of Star Trek Discovery. We're starting here mid-season because it took us a while to decide if this show was going to be worth our time, and we decided 2 episodes ago, or maybe last episode, that it was. So it got us excited enough to get back on here and start podcasting about Star Trek. I'm joined to my right by my brother Jeff. Say hello, Jeff.
Hey, what's going on?
Across from me, we have my lovely fiancée, Jane.
Hello.
And to my left, Josh.
That's me.
This is the first time I've been podcasting about Star Trek in a long while. Josh, this is your first time doing it at all. And maybe Jane as well.
Yes, mine.
Me and Jeff have done this before, but not in a recap setting. So this is our first time recapping a specific episode, which is very exciting. And just talking about the Star Trek Discovery in general, I was obviously super excited when I found out that there was going to be a new Star Trek TV series. After Enterprise kind of killed Star Trek on TV for over a decade, it was very welcomed back. I'm glad that they kind of took their time and they did it right. And when this show first hit, I felt like it was massively divisive across the fan base. I feel like it still is, generally speaking, but I am one of those who is now in favor of this show. I've spent some time getting to know these characters, getting to know this show, and the things that bothered me early on, I think, have been resolved in the sense of it's been all about the mirror universe and spoilers. Obviously, we're starting here on episode 13 instead of 1. We'll probably go back and do the first 12 at some point, but we're going to kind of be covering the season as it progresses, and then gearing up for season 2 and other things, other Star Trek projects as we go. So, what do you guys have to say about Star Trek Discovery? Josh?
So my first admission is that Star Trek Discovery is the first Star Trek series that I've ever watched. So I'm coming at it kind of fresh and sort of judging it and appreciating it as a show on its own rather than part of this huge canon that most people, everyone else in here and most people listening probably look at it through. So I think that, I can hopefully grow to love Star Trek as a whole, but right now I'm kind of just looking at this show as a show on TV that just happens to be pre-titled Star Trek.
And how much Star Trek have you watched in your life other than this show?
Handful of original series episodes and the J.J. Abrams movies.
Okay, so you're really...
He's a rook.
He's a rook, okay. Jane, your Star Trek knowledge would be...
Star Trek since I was a young child. My grandmother loved it, so got me into the original series, and have watched every episode multiple times over.
There you go. And Jeff?
I've seen the original series once, over Next Gen, probably the good episodes more than once. Deep Space Nine I've watched 3 times because it's my favorite.
Every episode?
Yeah.
Even the bad ones?
Yeah, because it's my favorite. It's my favorite story arc.
And Voyager?
Voyager, I really liked it when it was on. It was my favorite show when it was on. But then, in retrospect, Deep Space Nine when you watch Deep Space Nine in succession, much better than a week to week. Which this show is kind of I think will in the future be a great binge show. It's got that same kind of feel that Deep Space Nine does, where it's a consistent story, and it doesn't just go. It's not episodic. It's not we're changing it up this week.
These episodes don't really stand alone too well, in my opinion. This one, though, I think will be a rewatchable one. This one was action-packed. There was a lot going on in this episode. I'm kind of glad it is our first one we're podcasting about, because basically everything that's happened so far in the show has kind of led up to this point. So we start this episode off. Well, one thing to note here as well is that there was no cold open in this episode. Usually, or you show that previously on Star Trek Discovery, and they show you everything they want you to know or to remember that this is a thing, and then they do a scene, and then they do the title sequence, and then they bring us back. But not this time. This one they go straight to the music, which I thought was interesting. Josh.
Yeah, I like the fact that they did that in this episode, and forgive me, I don't know the name of the person who directed it, but I felt like the big reveal at the end of the last episode meant that the previously on scenes sort of served as that cold open, and it sort of set the stage nicely like that.
Yeah. If you haven't been on board with the show up into this point. You shouldn't need a freaking previously on. If you haven't figured out what's going on, like, you won't know what's going on, right? So it's like, yeah, it's a good choice.
Jane, you always like watching the previously ons, right?
I do. Maybe it's a bad memory, but I always like to watch those.
Okay. So the first scene of the show is like Lorca, Captain Lorca, who we now know is a Terran, the evil version of the Federation, this alternate universe where everybody is kind of a twisted version of themselves. He's basically freeing all of his followers from when he was last here in the Mirror Universe. And he says a very specific thing. He says, 1 year and 212 days of torture, which I thought was kind of interesting. And it kind of takes us into this whole thing about the Mirror Universe in general, and more specifically these agonizers and the agony booth. I have so many questions about the agony booth. Like they did touch on it in Star Trek Enterprise when they did that their Mirror Universe episode, but they basically says that it stimulates the pain receptors in all these different parts of your body, and it constantly moves around, and then you can never like even go numb on the pain or whatever. So and then when they did it in this show, they really upped it to make it look really terrible and really kind of horrific. And if I was in one of those for a year and 212 days, or if anybody was, I don't think you would come out of there being like, okay, let's, what are we doing now? Oh, we got to go storm the ship?
But last episode, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought they said about Lorca that he couldn't take much more of that. Like, we got to get him out. Like, I thought I misunderstood. So I didn't think you could be in there for an extended period.
But his crew was.
And then I found out this episode that they'd been in there for a year.
Well, they
so
also,
I'm a little confused about that.
On After Trek, they also commented on the fact that like nobody's beards had grown and all this kind of stuff, right? Like, so I guess they get to come out once a day and like maybe get a shower and a shave and eat something, and then they go back in.
Well, is the 1 year and 212 days the amount of time that they've been in there, or the amount of time that Lorca's been gone? Because they might have all gotten captured at different times since his exile. You know what I mean? So it's not necessarily. It's still a long time not to grow a beard, but maybe that's part of the technology. Maybe.
I got the impression it's both. That he's been on the run. He left about a year and almost 2 years at this point, and that they were, captured. And they reference it in the previous episode that they had to round up all his followers and open up whole cargo bays full of agonizers to accommodate everybody. Right.
The other thing, if they're going to be kept alive that long to presumably torture them longer, they're going to be getting some sort of sustenance, or they'd starve to death. So they must be either being let out, or there's some artificial, food or
they would eventually like die of starvation or I don't know how these things work enough. Anyway, I don't get too hung up on it, but it's I just keep watching and going, what is torture is being very like kind of glossed over here. It's yada 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 a bit here on Star Trek Discovery. And it doesn't look too torturous because as soon as you turn it off, everyone's kind of fine. And
they breathed heavily.
They look sweaty. They look like they just they just got off the treadmill.
Yep.
I think it's kind of like the opposite of them having multiple orgasms over and over and over without a break, but on the pain side. So that's why they look sweaty and they were breathing heavily after.
Even that makes me wonder.
You think they would be like traumatized, in some way.
Yeah, that they'd be like just withering husks on the ground, like not able to talk. And
yeah, like when you there's like guys in torture, camps or whatever in Iraq or whatever. They don't come out like, "Hey, Lorca, what do you got to do, Cap?" And
this is supposed to be worse than that because this is supposed to you have no recovery.
Even like solitary confinement, I think people are a little wacky coming out of there for 2 months.
And this is kind of like solitary confinement as well because you don't get to hey, look over at the guy in the next booth and make faces at each other or talk about your day. But maybe they do at when they get their recess. Anyway, so then we move over to Lorca then is looking for Stamets. He goes to go look for the mirror Stamets. And this really kind of threw me off as well because the episode before, episode 12, leads me to believe that when Stamets and the mirror Stamets are in the mycelial network, that somehow that they are switched bodies. There's like a Freaky Friday situation at the end of that episode. That's what I took away from it. When they both woke up, they both look like they woke up in each other's bodies because when Prime Paul Stamets wakes up, that's when Mirror Stamets woke up. And
I took it as them just trying to show the fact that, yeah, he got out, but this means this supposedly evil version of him also got out. Like, he freed the bad version at the same time. They were just kind of showing that as a negative consequence of him getting out. But
there didn't seem to be any consequences to that because, so we figure out pretty quickly that, this is the mirror Stamets, and he's hiding behind a hologram. And Lorca pulls him out and goes, what does he say to him?
I knew you wouldn't leave your baby.
Your baby.
Stamets was the one who betrayed Lorca to the Emperor, it seems like, because he was being forced to do all these things that he thought were even more morally reprehensible than the things that you would normally do as part of the Terran Empire. That's sort of what I took from it.
Yeah, he built the bioweapon that they end up using, right? So then he uses it against them.
So Mirror Stamets is some kind of like deranged mad scientist, basically.
Yeah, I think the point kind of with his character in the Mirror Universe is he doesn't really have any allegiance except to himself. Right. And that's kind of the point they're kind of trying making and that's why Lorca's like, I can't trust you. You know, you've already betrayed me once, but even if you're on my team, you could betray me in 2 seconds just because you need something for your machine to work better or whatever.
Yeah. And I just gotta point out, Jason Isaacs tearing up the scenery here. Just when he pulls him out, he's like, "Hello, Paul," and he's like, "Oh, I hoped you were dead." He was like, "I know," and then then we switch over. It's Burnham and Mirror Emperor Georgiou, and they're in the throne room. They're talking about how Lorca has gotten out, and he's got his followers, and they're trying to figure out what to do. And Michael Burnham tries to make this plea to her to say, like, I know him. I know how to stop him. We can work together. And then she kind of gets pissed off, and she's like, no, you don't be talking to me like that. Throw her in the brig. And then somehow you just have to kick people in this mirror universe, even though everyone's got a gun that can like vaporize you or in an instant. And you just got to kick a guy and then run into like a Jeffries tube and down the super fun slide, and you're out of there. Even though you want to have a problem with that?
Well, I thought they were trying to make the point that Michael Burnham is like a badass. And even both universes, and this is what the other Michael Burnham would have done. She would have found a way out, and like I think they're trying to create that she's really smart and that she's really tactical and that she can use those skills to her advantage. Also, I thought it was very quick. I think it was almost like because she was like, Georgia, we should do this. That I think it was just the fact that they spoke up. Like she even said anything to her. It was like in front of people. She was like, all right, screw you.
Yeah,
Right.
I was okay with it for two reasons. One, she's got those crazy Vulcan martial arts that she learned growing up.
Yeah.
Two, I think that the relationship between her and Georgiou has sort of established that there's something there, at least between Georgiou and the Mirror Burnham and the Prime Burnham and the formerly alive Prime Georgiou.
Yeah.
So it could be that Georgiou had orders to her people, not to kill, just to stun, and that might be one of the reasons that she was able to escape without getting vaporized.
Yeah, because the other guys were stunned. They got up.
Okay, but I feel like we're filling in the gaps here quite a bit. Like there's a lot of I was just having to suspend disbelief a little bit. In that, especially in that scene in particular, I was just like, how did she get out of that room? Like with all these armed people? But okay. Anyway, and then we come back to Prime Stamets, and he talks about what's going on with the network and how it's dying and everything else. Was everyone following this part of the story?
Yeah.
It was a lot of sci-fi jargon going on.
It was a lot of technobabble, and I usually like my fair share of technobabble, but I was having a hard time following what the hell was going on here.
I was like, just get to the point. Let's go. That's what I thought.
So the mirror, but basically the point was the Terrans, the mirror, Paul Stamets, he built some kind of crazy containment field to create a huge battery full of mycelial network spores, which they're using as this massive power source to power their massive ship.
Exactly, and they were basically sucking all the power from the mycelial network as it exists in the entire multiverse.
And this was affecting the whole multiverse.
I sort of read it as, right now we could just escape, so we need to put in a plot device that, we need to do something before we can escape to make the episode, advance the plot further and give Burnham time to get out of there.
Right, and we got to stop the evil Terrans because they're always up to no good, and we got to figure out,
Yeah, it was like, we got this perfect way to get out of here, but we need the containment field to get, shut down. Oh, let me work on the containment field, and then we'll shoot a photon torpedo into the big energy source. Boom, and that was like Josh was saying, it's like a plot device.
Well, exactly, and then the destroying of the containment field, releasing the mycelial spores, was the only thing that could get them back anyways, because their own spores were dead.
Right. And one thing I did notice here too is that he tells Saru, who's that hey, this is what the Terrans are doing, and he's it's destroy. It can destroy all life everywhere, not just in this universe or our universe, but everywhere. Which I thought was like, really, like it's like just by doing this one little thing in one universe, you can destroy life everywhere.
Kind of reminds me of the midichlorians. Is that the right word? In
From
Star Wars. That where did this come from? It's all like the
let's
Force.
Not get into midichlorians.
Yeah. But what was interesting was that Saru talks about like the Terrans must know this isn't sustainable, like that this is a resource that will die eventually. Yes,
I found that a little bit like cheesy in the sense because it got me to think about Earth and how we're using our resources. I thought that was a little bit of a plug against us currently, which I don't know if anyone else took it that way, but I thought, oh, that's a little cheesy.
Well, the other thing I wondered about too was like these Terrans to eventually achieve space travel would, to me, presumably have gotten past environmental issues, would have gotten past sustainability issues, because they would have learned that certain resources can be exploited or exhausted. And like the Terrans, for all their faults, they're more violent and vicious and xenophobic and all these other things, but they are post-racial, they are post-sexist, they like everyone's typically kind of equal in this world as long as you're human.
Well, exactly, but in comparison to the Federation in the Prime universe, they're still backwards because they're still racist just against not different colors of humans, but different races from the other parts of the universe. Mm-hmm. And it seems like they've probably focused more of their technological advancement on weapons and war rather than sustainability, which is what the Federation has been doing.
Right. And they hate the idea of the Federation. They hate the idea of humans working with aliens. It's like, it's so offensive to them. Right? Because they're kind of like the Klingons of this universe, whereas the Klingons are kind of like the humans. This is what was kind of portrayed.
I wish they would show like some sort of a backstory of the Mirror Universe and like show like what life is like on Earth in the Mirror Universe.
Yeah, they've never shown that in all the episodes.
Next year on the new prequel series of Star Trek Discovery.
Right. Mirror.
Okay, and then we come back to Lorca. And Lorca's talking about how he's telling Paul Stamets how he got to the Prime Universe. I do not understand this story as well. Basically, his ship, the Baran, was trying to escape from the big Emperor ship, right?
Right.
And he's like, I flew into an ion storm. And like literally the line that Stamets says is, you must have got your transporter signals reversed. I'm like, what does that got to do with anything?
Isn't that what happened to Kirk? How did Kirk?
It was a transporter, but this was not a transporter. This was a ship flying away into an ion storm.
I thought what they said was as he was being transported out of the ship in the ion storm, some signal between another transporter in the Mirror Universe and his got swapped. That's what I...
So did the Mirror Lorca get killed in that explosion? Or like, because they haven't like really explained that.
They didn't explain what happened to the Baran in either universe, really.
Yeah, but I'm more interested in knowing what happened to the Prime Lorca.
Yeah, me too. Like, there's all these things about Lorca's story that kind of got really glossed over. I was really hoping that they were going to pay that off more to kind of explain how he came to be, how he came to fool everybody in the Federation.
Yeah, that was my one grievance with this episode was that we didn't get to milk that. What's his name? Something Isaacs.
Jason
Isaacs. Yeah, like he's too good of an actor to kill off like that quickly. Like I wouldn't even have killed him. But like I'm kind of hoping like spoilers for later in the episode. But when he goes into the marsupial big Death Star thing,
yeah,
like I'm kind of hoping like he goes back into a network and they use him again because he's just too good of an actor and too good of a character. Like that's my only grievance, really. So. A
lot of people probably said that about Sean Bean in Game of Thrones, and that worked out okay for that show, killing
True.
him off. So maybe
True.
they're trying to pull some of that type of
like
bait and
I would have
switch.
expected. And this whole episode does feel kind of like a finale, a little bit. I'm surprised that there's going to be how many more episodes after this? Like 3, I think.
Yeah.
There's 3 more. Yeah,
Definitely.
there's
3 more to go.
That's
Like
why
a
I was
movie.
like, when we were watching that, I was like, there's 4 episodes left of this, and like this is moving like insanely fast.
Yeah.
It's like they just want to get this over with, and that's kind of what they did.
It felt like a little bit of a rush. Like I really enjoyed it for the most part, but like this is like where they start killing off mirror characters left and right, and so I'm just kind of like, oh, okay. So I didn't understand his story, how he got there, what happened to the other Lorca, what happened to the Prime brand or the Mirror brand. It's all it's like he flew into an ion storm and he ended up in the other universe, and somehow he fooled everyone to thinking he was his human counterpart.
Yeah, like that would be a good episode to like show like if they're gonna bring Jason Isaacs back, show exactly at that moment when that happened and how he figured out to become the actual Lorca, and like to just do like that whole backstory.
I would like to see it, even if it was a webisode or something.
I thought they might do this with Ash Tyler in the next episode, where they kind of do a bottle episode to show, what's been going on with him in the last, few days. But the other thing I was kind of thinking is, for anyone who watches The Walking Dead, when they do the governor episode and it goes back and shows his return, maybe they could do, exactly. Maybe they could do something with the Prime Jason Isaacs character, with the Prime Lorca at the start of the next season or something to kind of kick it off.
Right. Yeah, and so, okay, we'll get to that when we get a little later in the episode on Lorca's fate. But I remember we went to commercial after this point, and then we came back and says, warning, this is, this show contains violence. It didn't have any, disclaimers about sexuality or coarse language or anything like that. He's like, this show could be violent.
Good catch.
And we're like, oh, yeah, this is, the most violent Star Trek I've ever seen. And that includes the Dominion War, which was a pretty, brutal kind of scene. But in the 90s when they did that, it was a lot more tamed down than this. And then this scene was the hallway fight, and I was just kind of in awe for this whole thing. This is so Georgiou's forces against Lorca's forces, basically. And it starts off with whoever that ops officer is from Discovery. I don't know her name.
The black one?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know her name, but they show that Lorca's captured her mirror counterpart.
Yeah.
And then she's like, they let me live so that I could whatever, right? And then they vaporize her, and we get to see this really crazy vaporize effect on her.
Right.
This new. Have you ever seen this before in any of the Star Treks? Because usually it's like, and you get hit with this beam, and then you go and then you kind of fade away.
That's like what it was in Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely an example of the advanced military technology of the Terrans over the Federation.
I don't know if it's just that. I think it's they're like you're saying, they're modernizing the whole idea of Star Trek. They're not, how lame would it be if they did that?
Well, that's the thing is in terms of canon, this show is completely thrown canon on its head. Out the window. Basically, they're any special effect, any alien race, uniform, anything, the way a ship looks, all that can be changed. They've basically said that we're not going to stay loyal to anything that's come before. We're going to make this look really cool.
Yeah.
And so for someone like me who's a diehard, you got to stay loyal to it. And they did this when Enterprise had their crossover with the universe, which allowed them to see their future. They stayed super faithful to everything. And then this show didn't. And I'm still not super happy about it, even though I think it looks great. So we get these effects like Disruptor and people being vaporized, and it's, I don't know. Is it worth it? Is it worth to make it more entertaining for someone like Josh, who's not as hung up on that kind of thing? Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what I was going to say. For someone like me who hasn't watched Star Trek before, it obviously might help bring me into it. And at the same time, from that point of view, why limit yourself to the technology of effects and makeup from,
right.
decades ago, 50 years ago, just to be true to the show? So why not update it and say, well, it's more true to what it should be,
what it would look like.
Exactly.
But the only thing I don't like is the uniforms. It's hard for me to tell who's a friggin' engineering, who's a science officer.
With the gold, silver, bronze.
Yeah, but that's just their rank.
No, that's their division.
Oh, that's the division. Mm-hmm. Because I thought the symbol was.
That's their rank on their badge. Is their rank.
Gold's command, silver's engineering, and bronze is
silver is science.
I thought it was also the bands here.
Yeah,
on their,
it's also here, and it's on their collars and different places on the strip that goes down here. Okay. So those are the three.
But the doctors wear white,
and the doctors wear white with silver to represent the science division.
That's the only thing I don't like aesthetically. Other than that, I think it looks pimp.
Well, that's a pretty minor thing.
Yeah.
Most people had a problem with the way the Klingons were redesigned, and
I liked the Klingons for the most part. It was rough in the beginning with all the subtitles.
Yeah.
I don't like how long they take to speak. They put 3 words at the bottom, and it takes 30 seconds to get through the Klingon to say.
Klingon never used to be like that.
Is it not just language? Isn't there?
It's an official language, but I never remember them speaking it that slowly. But we're getting on a tangent. Anyway, so there's this whole amazing fight. What do you guys think of the fight in general?
Yeah, I agree with you. It was the best part of the episode for me. It was very like what's gonna happen here? You know, like first when the force field first comes up when they're shooting at Giorgio, and then right when she turns the guns on them, I was like, oh shit, you know, like
I was like, okay, this makes sense. And then they have to shoot the turrets and things like that. I would have even more elaborate, like if you're in the 23rd century and you have you're constantly paranoid about like coups and people trying to take over. You think your security system would be much more. Done. No, and so and Mirror Stamets at this point is helping Lorca. He's like, okay, shoot the containment field, and we'll get the containment field down, and then we'll be able to rush through. Right? They're just using him as like this helper guy.
Yeah, like they couldn't read a friggin' tricorder. Like you know, like why did they need him for that part? Like I didn't understand that. I was like, he's a science officer. You can figure out what the percentage of the force field is. They don't have the ability to do this. Like you know, like
yeah. I don't know. I think he's just giving them. He's just there for exposition, I suppose. And then at the end of it, like Lorca's forces kind of prevail, and Giorgio beams right out.
That's what I don't understand. How did they prevail?
How did they get past that force field, or
how did they prevail in general? Like how did Lorca?
Like you
win?
think the whole ship, like this ship is the biggest ship I've ever seen on Star Trek, Federation starship.
And how many men did Lorca have?
Yeah. It looked like he had like a gang.
Well, and the scene
50 to 100.
Yeah.
And the scene before where like she's like, "We have to get out of here. We need to scramble and flee." And he's like, "Please, I didn't come from a different universe if I didn't have a plan." And his plan was like, "I'm just gonna blow up force field up."
Yeah. I'm just gonna storm. I'm gonna storm the throne.
And that bioweapon.
To be fair,
yes.
Like 2
is
seconds.
that before that?
Yeah,
Yes.
that was before that. When
That
they
was
released the
before that?
that's exactly what I was gonna say. They release a bioweapon and it kills like everyone on the ship, I assume.
Or a lot of them.
It kills the decks that they need to get through to get to the throne room. I'm guessing that's what it did.
Okay, so that answers that. Sure. All right. And then we go back to the Discovery, and they're like basically saying we need to stay at warp, so we can't be boarded. This has never been established in Star Trek that you can't be boarded at warp.
Well, yeah, it has.
When?
They did it in the Star Trek movie.
Which movie?
The Star Trek Chris Pine movie.
Oh, that you could transport at warp. Yeah.
Yeah, you
they-
can't be boarded when you're at warp.
No, they transported while in
Right,
warp.
but that was they say in that movie that had never been done until later.
From a planet.
No, that's not what they say. They say it's because they're at warp. Even Spock says when like Kirk shows up, he's like, "You can't transport on here when we're at warp." You don't remember that?
No, of course. Yeah, no, I do remember that, but that's because he's transporting from a planet.
No, that's not why.
Yeah, it's transwarp beaming.
Transwarp. It has nothing to do with the planet.
Transwarp's a different thing.
What? You just said transwarp beaming.
No. No. If two ships are going at what's always been presented in Star Trek before is if two ships are going the exact same speed at warp, you can beam from one to the other.
Oh.
Who else has done that?
That was in the movie, right?
It's been in like multiple shows and things like they've done over time, right?
But if the Emperor's ship isn't at warp, then it can't theoretically board someone on a ship that is at warp if it's just sitting there.
Yeah, I just thought that it was interesting that they threw that line in there, basically. Okay, and then so we come back to the mirror. Lorca's taken the throne. He said, I like this line he says where, everyone says that winning, it feels empty once attained. What a bunch of idiots. It's like, it's great. And then Rekha Sharma, what's her name? Rekha Sharma from Battlestar Galactica. She's playing like Lorca's like lieutenant, right? We saw her, Commander Landry is the name of the character. She wants to kill Stamets really bad. She's like, "Oh, can we kill Stamets already?" And he's like, in a minute maybe. And then they decide to kill him. They were going to throw him down the chute, which
The moon door.
The moon door.
Yeah,
Like it was the moon door in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it was Star Trek Moon Door for sure.
Yeah. And then he's like, "Oh, that'd be so poetic." And then Rekha Sharma just shoots him in the back and vaporizes him. And I'm like, they killed Mirror Stamets like it was nothing. I guess he is nothing. He's not a good guy, but
Maybe this means that like they're done with the mirror universe. That's why they're killing people because they're not staying there.
Yeah, once that
It's a
happened,
series.
I was like, "Oh no, this is the end of this."
yeah, this is not dragging out any more than this, right?
I think a lot of what they were doing up to that point, especially with the way Mirror Lorca interacts with Mir Stamets was showing the relative morality between Lorca and Georgiou, who we know Mir Georgiou's evil. She eats Kelpians and hates other races, but they're trying to show that Lorca's even worse, so we don't think it's weird that Burnham sides with her.
Okay, I didn't even feel like he is worse. I feel like Lorca, if anything, is better than Georgiou.
Well, he did kill a whole bunch of people on that ship with the bioweapon, so he used biowarfare.
Or they're equally bad.
And I don't know when it was in the episode, but he does say a line about, she's become too soft.
Yeah, he does, yeah.
Soft. Okay, when she comes up in the previous episode and says, I'm not really from your universe. I'm from the Federation. And then just at the mention of the Federation, she kills all of her people who are in earshot who can hear about this. Just insane. I'm like, she's just as murderous. She's not soft.
That was a cool scene.
Yeah, he was just saying that because he was playing to what Terrans care about, which is strong leader.
Strong leader. Aliens suck.
Yeah, it seems
when we saw her firebomb the aliens, the Emperor. Yeah. If anything, this Georgiou is not soft whatsoever. Not a redeemable character, as far as I can tell.
No, I don't think she's a redeemable character, but I think they're doing their best to try to show Lorca as being worse. I don't know if they were successful. But
no, I don't think so. I if anything, Lorca, when he tells it, later in the episode when he was talking to Discovery, he's like, I thought you guys were pretty cool. I would totally hire you to be in my empire if you weren't devoted to the Federation so much and all this kind of stuff. His only beef with them seems to be that they like aliens, and he can't get behind that. But other than that, he seems like he's an okay leader and everything else.
I don't know about that. I don't know. Michael Burnham seemed even before he even said anything, she was like, "You're gonna kill my Discovery." So I'll she made that trade for herself or whatever, and that. Right. I think she knew that he was going to kill all of them because they knew the truth about him and everything, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my take is that he's more evil.
I think we're getting a bit ahead, though, but
right. And then we go over to Michael Burnham's talk, finds where Georgiou is hiding in some kind of a panic room, I assume, and and the first thing I'm thinking was all this, why is she helping Georgiou? I know she looks like her old captain, but they literally just ate a Kelpian together that they handpicked out, and she saw her murder all these other people, and she's talking in the way that they're talking, and then there's this whole duality with the badges where she's got the mirror Michael Burnham's badge and she's got the Prime Universe Georgiou, and they're both holding it. I thought that was a cool kind of thing for them to do, but also at the same time I'm like, this is a stretch for me. Why Michael Burnham, who's all about the Federation, all about good and doing the things that are right, that she says, I won't let you die again. I'm like, why not?
I have a theory, and I think it's part of Burnham's character development. I think they're trying to play off her Vulcan logic against her human emotion, and because she betrayed the Prime Georgiou, she almost feels indebted to this other Georgiou that looks like her, whereas because she's betrayed by Lorca, she sides with Georgiou.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think Josh is right. I think that's what the angle they're going for, is that she feels guilty too.
And she's acting emotionally, which she shouldn't be doing.
And that's not very Vulcan of her, even though she's not a Vulcan, but she's basically...
She was raised by them.
Okay, so then we go back to the Discovery, and they have this meeting in engineering that they have to figure out a way to take down the Death Star, being the ISS Charon. They got this plan. We have to use... One thing they said is we're going to have to use all the energy on our ship to pull this mission off, and the blast will most certainly kill us. And I'm like, okay, well, that's all right. But then they give Saru this speech where he's like, you know what? I can sense the coming of death. I don't sense it today. He gives this really rousing kind of thing. And I'm just, at this point, it hits me. Who's the new captain of this ship? Is it him?
True.
Yeah, they call him captain 5 times in the episode.
Yeah, so is that where this show is going now?
No, I don't think so. No. But well, maybe for to the end of the season.
Maybe, but long term, is the idea here to get Michael Burnham in the captain's chair eventually?
I don't think so.
I have an idea for how that could happen, but it's for the end of the episode.
Okay. And then then they have this plan. It's revealed that Michael Burnham's plan is I'm going to take you, pretend to take you prisoner, Georgiou. Right, and then I was like, "This is the most terrible plan." What if she had brought Georgiou in, and we'll just wait for our moment, and then we're going to take them back. We're going to like figure out how to get them. And I was like, okay, but then how did you know Lorca was not just going to kill her right away?
Yeah, and he should have. Stupid Lorca.
Why wouldn't he kill her?
Well, he should have. Like, and they were pissed off. Remember when she emergency transported? They were all pissed off. They're like, you didn't tell me she could emergency transport. Well, they were definitely going to kill her in that moment. You know, so like, why they like drew it out with Michael Burnham? It was like, I don't know, it was strange.
Doesn't that always happen? Bad guys have to make a speech like before they kill the person, and that.
Well, it seems so typical, right? Where he's just like this.
This isn't Star Wars. This is Star Trek.
He's a mustache twirling villain effectively at this moment, right? Okay, and then I think I remember them Saru referencing. I don't accept no-win scenarios. This comes up a few times in here, right? Yeah. It's basically like Kobayashi Maru, that this is like an impossible mission. Felt like they were stealing Kirk's thunder a bit here.
They were just stealing old canon Star Trek in general.
Just to get us excited?
I think so. I think they were, like you even said it, Jane even said it during the episode. She's like, there's a lot of Kobayashi Maru going on in this episode. And it's like, yeah, well, they're picking and choosing what they want to steal from, a little bit,
But don't worry, it's not a no-win scenario because we'll figure it out. So then it's Tilly and Stamets. They have this whole conversation about, like, okay, well, if we create this warp bubble and we do this and there's a bunch of technobabble, they're like, we can probably survive. Even though I know we just said a few minutes ago we're surely going to die on this mission. If we do this and do this just right, we can get out.
They ran another simulation.
They're like, we just have to ride the wave.
They rode the wave. We've seen that.
I was like, I had no idea what they were saying to each other whatsoever. I was just like, okay, I guess, sure,
I just took it as they don't have their own little mycelial forest. The explosion is going to throw a bunch of mycelial branches out into the universe, and they're going to use those instead of their own forest to transport.
Okay, then you got it more than I did.
That's what I took. I could be completely wrong, but it made sense to my Sunday night at midnight.
I've been watching Star Trek my entire life, and I'm rarely like as confused as I was in that conversation.
They really piled on the jargon. And the thing is, we don't know anything really about these spores. They're a new thing, So it's it's totally made up, which all Star Trek is. But
but usually it's rooted in science on some level.
That's where it's science fiction, not fantasy, right?
It just has to be theoretically possible, and I'm assuming or hoping that they check that part of it at least before they put it into the episode.
Okay, and then we transition right into this final battle, which. I look at my notes here. All I wrote was "wow" because it moves. There was no time to even think about things. What do you guys take from that whole the final battle with
when Michael Burnham and Giorgio overtake?
First of all, I gotta say, the way it kicks off again, this plan of Michael Burnham's again is very convenient. She's got this plot armor around her where she brings Giorgio in. They don't kill Giorgio, and then once the Discovery shows up. They just need that distraction long enough for Michael Burnham to kick one of Lorca's guards in the shin, and then they have guns, and then now all this battle is going on. So there's this battle going on inside the throne room and also outside with the Discovery and everything else. And I thought what was interesting was that Lorca has this obsession for Michael Burnham. He wants to make her an empress or make him his queen or whatever. Right, and that he doesn't. But all he really wants to do at the same time is rule the Terran Empire, and he completely jeopardizes that. His plan is so foolish that he can't. He would have won if he had just didn't have this one weakness, which I thought was fairly basic, kind of as a plot device.
Well, so the title of the episode is The Past is Prologue, and Lorca does this speech, I believe, to his followers at the start about destiny, and, I think we touched on this earlier. Yeah. And I think the fact that he runs into Burnham, by chance on the prison transport in the first episode of the series, I think he takes that as a sign that he needs to bring her back and that he needs to bring her by his side, and he's got this sort of old, antiquated Roman belief in destiny, and I think that's sort of they're trying to explain that the weird part of his plan.
And I do feel like the Terran Empire is this there would have been if the Roman Empire had ruled the world. To me, that they are the Romans,
or the Nazis.
But they don't come across as Nazis to me.
They're pretty Nazi.
They torture a lot of people in chambers.
But Romans did that too.
They're pretty racist.
Romans were like that too.
No, for sure.
Like there's just a lot of parallels to the Nazis as well. Like,
well, the Nazis were trying to be like the Romans.
Exactly.
Like, and the same thing you're saying about destiny and stuff. The Nazis felt the same thing. You know, like they thought that was their right and their, you know, their destiny to rule. Right. Like. Right,
but they were more about wearing funny armbands and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And,
aesthetically, maybe not the exact same, but yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I just think they're trying to show that Lorca has this belief in fate and that he must believe that Burnham is integral to his plan because she was fated to be with him.
Yeah, I guess.
More romantic.
To the point where his Rekha Sharma, who's his lieutenant, they're having a fight, and she's fighting Burnham at one point, and he literally slashes her in the back just to get to her, and he's trying to like contain her and not let her like you would with like a kid, right? And then I'm just like I was shocked as hell. So then she gets the best on him, and she has the gun at him, and she's like, "I'm not going to kill you because that's not what the Federation does. That's not what Starfleet officers does." And then Georgiou's like, "Well, I will." And then just to to kind of reinforce that Georgiou's kind of a scumbag as well, she stabs him in the back with a sword. Right.
So then at this point, I don't understand why Georgiou didn't kill Burnham.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, they helped each other.
Well, and I think they still have that. Say you're a kid or your adopted kid's dead. This person looks exactly like them. You're going to feel something for them.
Yeah, they also helped each other. They weren't really enemies in that moment, right? So.
But why was she defeated emperor at that point? Like,
yeah, that part I didn't understand. That. Yeah, she just won.
She just turned the tables on this rebellion and everything else.
There's still billions of people, presumably on Mirror Earth, that will hear that she basically lost everyone on her giant ship and was almost defeated. That will probably order her execution or stage a coup or something. That's what happened to Roman generals when they lost big battles. When they were out fighting. And they return to Rome and they're killed.
I'm glad you know so much about this because
Japanese emperors are like that too. They kill themselves.
So
right?
she lost in battle, but she kind of wins at the end, right? So
she won, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. It wasn't a win-win, and the fact that she even allowed it to start is a negative.
Right, I agree. Like I don't even understand how it happened. Like, okay, all right. So then Lorca gets then thrown out the moon door. And we see him like fall down to the spore thing
into the network.
So this is where did he really die? Like I was surprised they killed him off here, if they killed him off at all.
Was the shield around the energy ball down yet at that time?
Yeah, it was.
It was.
Yeah,
because if it wasn't, maybe the shield just vaporized him.
I think it was. I think it was down.
But wouldn't he have died from like exposure to space?
Well, he was also just stabbed in the back.
And he was just stabbed in the back. He had a rough a minute there or so, right?
I think this episode had probably 50% of the effects and choreography budget of the entire season, and they were just trying to use it all.
Yeah, like great effect. I loved like him, like whatever that was, if he was vaporized or absorbed into them. These spores, I drive me nuts because I don't understand how they work or whatever, or how they weave the universe together or don't. But anyway, so then I was like, oh, geez, Jason Isaac's off this show now, and then I guess Saru, we're not going to get like Prime Lorca taking over, right?
No.
Well, they haven't explained that.
They haven't explained where he is. You know?
As far as we know, he's dead. That seems to be
presumed dead.
Yeah, I would say presumed dead.
Okay, but then right at the right moment, they beam out Mirror Georgiou and Burnham. She grabs her. And a side note: when you grab somebody into your transporter beam, you beam in together. You don't beam into two separate spots.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I thought that was weird, but like I said, I don't know the science. I haven't seen the other series, but
beam together.
So going back to like what you were saying, Josh, where you have a theory, I think I know what your theory would be.
Do you want me to tell you it, or do you want to guess?
Can I guess quick?
Yeah, sure.
The fact that she grabbed Georgiou and brought her back to Discovery, and they brought her back to the Prime, they're going to use Georgiou to say Georgiou never died.
No, exactly. That's
right?
I even did research on what happened to her body because I couldn't remember.
Like fabricate a story that there was no mutiny and all this other stuff.
Yeah, and then Georgiou would be like, "Oh, Michael Burnham, she's cool."
Well, I feel like Georgiou is going to be really pissed at Burnham for doing that because, again, it goes back to Roman and now Terran honor of wanting to die honorably. I think she wanted to die in that hallway, defending her, making a last stand, not retreating, and by pulling her out, she denied her that noble death that would send her up to, like the
Stovacor.
Exactly. So So I think if anything, Georgiou might go along with a plan like that because she wants to advance her own agenda, either to gain power within the Federation or to get back to the Mirror Universe. But definitely, her body was never recovered. There's no proof that she's dead. They still have her Starfleet badge.
Except, what's his name? The two of them, L'Rell and Vok. They ate her, remember?
Yeah, but who's going to believe a couple of Klingons and one of them's in a Ash Tyler body and just seems like a crazy dude?
No. She's not. She is dead. We ate her for sure.
Yeah. They did, but I mean within Starfleet.
Yeah,
I'll prove that.
But that wouldn't be very Starfleet of Burnham to do that.
Okay,
Would it?
I know.
Lie?
No.
No.
We're just kind of talking here about these final moments where they set up like at the end of the episode. So at the right moment they beam out, and then the explosion happens, and like that conversation we didn't understand, but this is what they were trying to set up, that they were going to ride this wave and then go to warp at the right time, and then they're going to use the spore drive again, and then they're jumping home. They're finally using the spore drive to get back to their universe, and then they bring in Dr. Culber here again. They were really milking this Dr. Culber relationship, and he's like, "Follow the music, Paul," which I thought I wrote down. And then they were waiting for Stamets. What's happening? Are we going to get there? They're kind of going through the crazy path there, and then this one spore lands on Tilly. This is what Jane, you had said, this Lorca?
God, it's Lorca. It's his essence.
Did Lorca get absorbed into the spores and then somehow get onto the Discovery? And I guess it's possible.
I thought it was
It's
just
something.
a cool effect. That was all I...
No, it's something.
That's what I thought too.
I just thought that...
It's something they're trying
something.
to... It's something like it's being set up there in some way.
Something made it out of, it came from the Mycelium.
Can you imagine, like, what's her face? The cadet girl has to play... Tilly has to play Lorca. Like, Lorca's in Tilly's body or something like that. You know? How messed up would that be?
I want to see her performance as Jason Isaacs.
Yeah.
Well, she was performing it as evil Tilly for a couple episodes, so it's not that different.
Barely. No. She's like, "Oh, just wait and hold your horses."
Gosh darn.
She's like a character. Okay, so then Stamets like, "Guess what, Captain Saru? We made it back to our universe. We're exactly where we should be in the Alpha Quadrant, but we're 9 months late. Too late. We're 9 months have passed somehow." And he goes, "Okay, well, let's call the Federation and find out how the war's going." Turns out the war's going very bad because it's over and the Klingons have won. And that's kind of what we're left off on the thing. So this is where I kind of want to talk about the speculation. Where do they go from here? Because obviously the Klingons didn't win that war because, well, first of all, as far like this show takes place 10 years before Kirk. And as far as I know, there was never a war with the Klingons. No, there was never a reference to a war taking place in this decade. And is it possible that somehow, like they're going to have to resolve this storyline? It's going to be a time travel story, I would presume.
That was my thought.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think that's the way this show's going to roll. I don't think they're going to the Star Trek universe that you know and love. I don't think they're going to do that.
Do you think that maybe they showed up 9 months later in another alternate universe that's almost identical to the real universe, like the universe from the Star Trek films or something like that?
Or is this their way of trying to reboot things?
Which they do with the films.
Which they do with the films, right?
Right. It's like a blank slate. They can do whatever they want now. Right?
Like when they first said, like, we're not where we're supposed to be or we're in a different time or whatever, I was really hoping that they were going to be like post-Voyager. I'm like, okay, great. We don't have to have all this prequel bullshit anymore.
Why do you dislike the prequel stuff so much? I don't understand this.
Because, like, I know that they're going to save the universe because the universe is still there in Picard's time.
Not if they make it an alternate universe.
But then why do I want to watch an alternate universe? I want to watch...
Because you won't know what's going to happen anymore, so it'll get rid of that knowledge, the knowledge of the future that you're just complaining about.
But you said it in the future!
Yeah, but in the future, they're all lame.
Why?
By the time it gets to Voyager, it's pretty lame. You got to admit.
But they could have done this. Well, why is it
It's
not...
too civilized?
It's too civilized, yeah.
Something has to happen to explain the absence of this spore drive in all of the future Star Trek canon.
Yes.
So they're either in an alternate universe or they're in the future, or they have to somehow destroy it to save the current universe or to travel through time back 9 months.
Or if the spore drive and all that stuff is like a future tech, and they're able to like explain that came from like way beyond Voyager time, and like that would make more sense to me. It's like, where did this come from?
This technology doesn't sync up with, like, it's Like, you don't think Voyager could have got home with that?
It would have helped them out.
Like, they would have just punched it into their computer and say, hey, remember in the 2250s when we had that spore drive?
Yeah.
Let's go find one of those.
Even if it turns out, like, it has some kind of, like, really bad side effect or something else, I think the Voyager, they would have used it. For sure.
Yeah, the wormhole was such a big part of Deep Space Nine, and
certainly on Voyager there was that episode with the Equinox, right? The evil Star Trek crew that was killing the aliens to get home.
It was like the tardigrades where they were harvesting them,
right? They certainly would have done that. If they knew about it, at least if it wasn't classified.
Especially if it was a bunch of trees that made it. They were like, Voyager would have loved that. They would have been like, oh, sweet, like we don't have to kill anybody for this.
But I'm hoping they connect the dots, like that it makes sense because.
Yeah,
they have a plan. I hope they do.
And the fact that we're speculating it could go this way, it could go that way, which makes it exciting, I guess, right? Like, they can go a lot of different ways next. They could reboot this. They could set it in an alternate timeline, and then that. I hope that's not the case, because I want Discovery to be part of Star Trek. And I've always felt like the J.J. Abrams, Chris Pine version stands on its own. It's its own timeline and whatever. It's fun, but it doesn't affect core canon.
Apparently the next movie might reverse that, though. I've heard.
What do you mean?
The next Pine movie?
Yeah.
There's going to be no Chekhov, that's for sure.
And they're apparently bringing Hemsworth back into it, so he's going to somehow exist again.
Liam Hemsworth. Right?
No, Chris Hemsworth.
Oh,
is it Chris Hemsworth that played his dad?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was Liam.
Yeah, so, but we're getting off topic. I don't know if you had any other thoughts on that.
No. I just was like, I'm just kind of thinking like, yeah, where do they go from here? They have to reverse. Obviously, they're not going to let the Klingons have conquered the Federation unless they want to play that out for a little bit and show us what that looks like. But
there was no contact with the Federation at all. It seemed like
no, they're done.
Yeah, the map was pretty red.
Pretty red.
Sorry, I think the next two episodes are going to wrap up the Ash Tyler Vok storyline because that's just been sitting there and it hasn't really been relevant for the last few episodes. They've kind of had to throw them in to remind us that they're there, but I think that'll have something to do with figuring out what happened with the Klingons.
Okay, can we just speculate a little bit on Ash Tyler for just a moment? And we'll probably get into this on the next episode because I'm guessing, because he was not in this episode at all, that he will be a big part of the next one. Who is he? Is he Ash Tyler or is he Vok?
He's both.
But whose body is he?
He's both bodies.
No, he's Vok's body manipulated.
He's in Ash Tyler's skin.
With Ash Tyler's
is it
psyche put on top of it.
Is this like a Nicolas Cage, John Travolta face-off situation?
No.
It's more than the face, for sure.
Because he is still Ash Tyler, too. There are moments where he's Ash Tyler, for sure.
But they just downloaded his personality, right?
What do you mean they downloaded it, though? How do you download it?
I don't know.
Like, that's...
I won't give it... I don't want to spoil a movie that came out this year, so no. But there is a very popular, highly regarded movie that came out this year that kind of reminded me of it, so...
Like a dual personality thing? Like, I get, like... is he a Klingon or is he a human? That's what I want to...
He's a Klingon.
He's a Klingon.
I think the Klingons did as much as possible to make him Klingon, but being able to pass for a human, and that might have involved accidentally leaving some residual Ash Tyler in there.
Okay. It's like they may have done too good of a job of getting Ash Tyler's personality put on top.
Exactly, because he needed to have Ash Tyler's real memories to pretend that he was Ash Tyler at first, and there was obviously some sort of code word, that chant that L'Rell gave him.
Whom do we see? Kairos.
Exactly. It's something that's supposed to wake him up, and it obviously didn't go to plan, but I think he's mostly Klingon.
But now going forward, he's going to be Ash.
In Star Trek, if you hold a tribble up to a Klingon, the tribble will go, "Wah!" Right? And then when the human goes, it goes, purrs, right? It's like
And isn't there a tribble on Lorca's desk?
And I assume that never...
Maybe Ash Tyler was never in that room.
There was no scenes, because I was waiting for that, and I didn't
I don't think he is, like, full Vok.
They got to really explain this, because when they tried to explain it, they put this really ambiguous technobabble into things, and you don't know, is he Ash Tyler, is he Vok? And I feel like they're doing this because they want to keep this actor around, and they want to keep this Ash Tyler character as part of the crew. So they're trying to set it up so that he will be Ash Tyler in everything.
Well, okay, let's speculate real quick. Where is that going? Because in my mind, both Ash Tyler and L'Rell are getting off Discovery, and are gonna they're gonna become like the leaders of the Klingons or something. Because there's who's the leader on the Klingon side. They don't really have characters to really do that with.
The one character they had, he's dead.
Yeah,
they killed him off. So
that's where I see like the next episode going.
I think they're gonna kill him off because they've been killing off people like crazy. So that's my.
Well, considering they killed off Lorca already at this point, I'm just like, well, I guess all the bets are off. Like, other than Michael Burnham, I don't know who's safe on the show. Like,
I don't think a love story for Michael is in the cards for long term as well.
Yeah,
right, with like,
I agree, and I think it's a little too cliche too.
Yeah.
She's gonna bang lots of dudes throughout the series.
Michael Burnham.
Oh yeah.
So they gotta leave. They gotta leave her single.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
It'll make for more intrigue.
But that's only if she's the captain, right? And then she's banging people like Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Riker.
Or Riker. I'm still interested to see what they're gonna do with her. Is she gonna end up like? I think the whole point of like the first episode, the first scene is Georgiou saying to her like, "I want you to become a captain," and then this whole thing happens, and she mutinies foolishly, and then she gets thrown out of Starfleet and everything else. And I'm just like, okay, you were setting her up as our captain, and now you've stripped that all away, and she's less than even a cadet.
But now there's a new Georgiou who wanted the Mirror Burnham to be the next emperor, because you don't adopt someone in Roman society, even in the early Roman monarchy, without wanting them to succeed you.
Right.
So maybe the new Georgiou wants Burnham to be a captain again, and she'll help her because she has the power to say, "I told her to mutiny. It was all an elaborate plot to fool people." And
to fool the Klingons.
Exactly.
Or something. Mm-hmm. I guess. And so, but like you'd have to get Saru in on this. You'd have to get that girl with the crazy metal in her eye thing. She was there too.
Well, they could have just said it was an act.
Yeah.
It's two of them. The other crew doesn't want to be really being on it.
The Discovery crew knows that that's not the real Georgiou, right?
Yeah.
So that's gonna throw a wrench in that plan.
It all depends on where they go from here. I think that they're going to spend at least part of this next episode saying like, this is what it looks like when the Klingons take over. And
That'll be cool.
That would be cool to see, I guess, right? Like,
I won't
without subtitles.
I won't be surprised if like the first scene is the Discovery getting attacked and them saving L'Oreal and Ash Tyler, and then they're like on the Klingon ship, and then they somehow escape with the spore drive, get to Earth or something, and like that's kind of where I see it going.
Or they've already escaped, and they're going to show us how that happened.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think that wraps up this episode, this recap episode. Any final thoughts?
I like that we don't know where it's going.
I like that.
In retrospect, we can say, we knew that. Well,
yeah, it's not paint by
pretty...
numbers whatsoever, which is nice. I gotta say that this, I think Star Trek has finally surpassed Star Wars in terms of like being really. Wow. Like if you just saw that that Last Jedi movie, and then I would rather watch this episode.
Yeah.
1,000,000 times over. Like
it's on the edge of my seat.
Last Jedi was, not very good.
I don't want to argue with you about that. That can be an entire other podcast. Does anyone care to know what the next episode is called?
Oh yes, please.
Because that might shed light. It's called The War Without, The War Within.
The war with...
That's going to be Ash Tyler.
So there's going to be a war with the Klingons, and there's going to be either a war with Ash Tyler on the ship, or some sort of a civil war between the different factions that are deciding what to do.
Well, no, I think there'll be a war within Ash Tyler as well.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. They're like, because they showed it at the last episode where Ash Tyler was Ash Tyler again. And he was like, remember? And he was like... I forget what he said, but he said something to Anthony Rapp.
He said, "Where's Burnham?" or "How's Burnham?" or something like that.
Wait, isn't Vok dead? Didn't she do like the Klingon war or death?
That's what it looked like.
I don't trust anything that L'Oreal says.
Yeah, I don't trust you.
Anyway. So thanks for joining us on Live Long and Podcast. We'll be covering the next episode next week, and if you have any requests, let us know. Until then, live long and podcast. Good night.
Good night.